From what I understand already here, we probably should end it for today.
Oh, this has been so fun, though.
Had so many
But you know what's
laughs.
even more fun? The garden doctor, Bob Zontag, is lined up. He's waiting
Or
in the wings.
Zondag.
Zontag. Have I been mispronouncing it this whole time? You can go to Daily Dodge TV on the Daily Dodge website, and you could watch the garden doctor. Don't forget to call in. Dector? 920-885-4446 is the Ho-Chunk Gaming Wisconsin Dells lucky numbers. See you tomorrow, folks.
Are your legs tired? Do you need help getting out of that old chair that sits too low? Discover the Power Lift Chair Recliners at McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam. With the touch of a button, these chairs will lift you to a standing position or recline you to a comfortable nap. There are a variety of sizes in stock, from small to medium to large to the big mans, and many fabrics to choose from. Prices start at only $699. You can even get a lift chair with heated massage or with an adjustable headrest and lumbar support. Don't worry about the power going out because the lift chairs come with a battery backup. Delivery is free. If your mom needs a lift chair in her room at an assisted living facility, McKinstry's will deliver it. There are a lot of models in stock, so you can get it now. McKinstry's is a lift chair service center. McKinstry's Home Furnishings, downtown Beaver Dam. Use the entrance in the tower parking lot, which is handicap accessible.
Year after year, McKinstry's.
The time is 10:29, and the news is brought to you by Prairie Ridge Assisted Living Life Celebrated Daily. Now with your 95.3 WBEV News, here is Justin Wilski.
A Fond du Lac teen is charged with recording teenage girls without their knowledge at a Lomira farm. Roberto Cardoza allegedly used his cell phone to record the underage victims. He reportedly hid it under a sink in a pair of shoes. If convicted, the 19-year-old faces up to 7 years in prison. Cash bond was set at $300, and a preliminary hearing is scheduled for October 13th. A bench warrant has been issued for a Fond du Lac woman accused of breaking into a home in Watertown and causing over $50,000 in damage. Alyssa Cruz was scheduled to make her initial appearance on Monday, but never showed. She allegedly smashed TVs, mirrors, and destroyed furniture in April. When questioned by law enforcement, Cruz allegedly said she was angry, but not with the victim. If convicted, the 33-year-old faces up to 16 years in prison. The Fond du Lac Police Department have referred charges this week in a stabbing incident in the city. Officers were called to the SSM Health Emergency Department last month for a 40-year-old being treated for severe knife wounds. A 31-year-old Fond du Lac man was arrested 2 days after the incident. Attempted homicide and first-degree recklessly endangering safety charges were referred Monday to the Fond du Lac County District Attorney's Office. The Beaver Dam Police Department is reminding motorists to keep an eye out for flashing red lights near train crossings. Lieutenant Jeremiah Johnson says this is made more important along Highway 151, where motorists are traveling at higher speeds. He says while people head down to the freeway, they are not expecting to see the red lights start to flash, but they need to be prepared. He adds when those lights start flashing, you need to stop, and emphasizes doing so where the 2 R's and a cross is painted into the roadway. The Dodge County Sheriff's Office is recognizing the women of their agency. Monday was National Policewoman Day, which celebrates the contribution of women to the law enforcement and public safety career field. Just 10% of law enforcement nationwide are made up of women. Sheriff Dale Schmidt says in Dodge County they are fortunate and proud of the contributions that the women of their department have had. And citizens in the Hustisford School District are invited to attend 2 planned workshops to discuss facility needs. The purpose is to cover building improvements and help refine the district's master plan. The first workshop is tonight at 6:30 p.m. at the Junior-Senior High School, and the next is September 28th at the elementary school. I'm Justin Wilski reporting from the Daily Dodge News Center. Submit your news tips at dailydodge.com.
You're listening to 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. The time is 10:32. Now let's join the garden doctor.
Doctor and or adjunct garden doctor. Do you have an official title, Bob?
Yeah, I'm the garden doctor's brother.
So that's we can call that adjunct garden doctor. Well, thank you so much for joining us. If you have a question for the garden doctor, feel free to call on the Ho-Chunk Gaming lucky numbers 4, 6. And why don't we start out with the flowers in the room here, because you brought in 3 different planters, each with, are these the same varieties of flowers here?
No, we have asters on the far right, or maybe far left on the TV. And asters are hardy and beautiful fall blossoms. And then we have the two pots, the rust-colored mum and then the yellow mum. And I call mums a hardy annual because unless you treat them well, unless we have a mild winter, they may not come back. But beautiful in fall colors, a lot of blossoms, really bright in fall.
So the extent of my layman's knowledge about mums is that they do pretty well in fall in Wisconsin?
They do. Falls, the ones we find in pots and so on and so forth, they're potted in spring. They don't come back, they haven't come back from the previous year. The asters you can bring back year after year.
We are joined with Bob Zondag here, talking about some of the different varieties. Bob, can we plant any flowers right now in preparation for winter or spring?
You know, this is one of the things that we at Jungs have tried to emphasize to people, is that fall is a great time to plant. Because of the more moisture, because of the coolness and so on and so forth, you still have 3 months for the plants to root into the ground, and so it's a great time to plant. If you plant them now, they will pop next spring right away, as opposed to planting them in spring and then they have to grow all through the spring and summer. So fall planting is very nice. And the other thing about fall is that you usually find sales. For instance, now we have 25% off on our perennials and 25% off on our shrubbery, and they still have a very good selection. And so fall planting is really a nice time. As far as grass, this is the best time of the year to plant grass, because you have the moisture, you have the coolness, and yet you have the warmth of the day. And so starting grass in the fall is the best time of the year to start grass. And right now is probably one of the best times. We just had this large rain, and the ground is moist. You want that moisture. The grass should be wet for the first 21 days that you plant it to keep it growing, and away you go. The other thing is that now is a great time to fertilize your lawns. Most people don't realize that lawns actually go dormant in the summer. They don't die back in summer, they actually go dormant in summer. And then in the fall, they start to revigorate themselves to get through that winter. And so now is an important time to fertilize.
So when it comes to grass seed or fertilization, we can probably find both of those at Jungs Garden Center. Where can we find Jungs around the area?
Well, we have got 5 garden centers. We have the one in Randolph, which is probably closest to Beaver Dam. We have the one in Sun Prairie, which is very easy to find for the people from this area. We have 2 in Madison, one on Verona Road and one on Northport, and then we have one in Stevens Point.
So lots of different options for people. If someone really wants to start a garden, they want to start planting, and they want some easy plants to start right now so they can be blooming in spring, what are some of the easiest varieties for people just starting out and trying to grow things?
There's so many different varieties. You know, some of the companies have over 500 different type perennials, so it sort of depends upon the color, when you want them to bloom, how easy you want them, whether they aggressively grow or whether they stay relatively within their space. So there's so many different varieties, and that's why we train our people at the garden centers to know what perennials and what flowering plants they have. You also have things like hydrangeas and crab apples and lilacs and, you know, other blooming shrubbery, azaleas, rhododendrons. And so depending upon whether you have sun or shade or whether you want blooming in spring or summer or fall, or whether you want blooming year-round, depends upon what type of plant you plant. For instance, the reason annuals are popular is because they bloom throughout the summer. But, of course, they're only good for 1 year. They're an annual. Perennials normally have their time they bloom, but they don't bloom summer long. And so it's a matter of sort of planning what you want. and what you get. And then there's also all sorts of leafy perennials that are beautiful because of the leaves and the shapes and the textures that you can get from them as opposed to the flowering, such as hostas and the grasses and things like this. So it's a wide variety of things and wide thing to look at.
We're speaking with Bob Zondag, the garden doctor's brother from Jungs Garden Center, talking about what to plant in fall for upcoming in spring. And there's probably a lot of expectations of what people want to plant, of plants that they expect to be able to plant around their home, but soil conditions may not be conducive to that. How can someone check their soil to see if a plant is going to thrive in that given condition?
First of all, you're going to have to know what the plant would like. You know, whether like an acid soil, with like the alkaline soil. You want to check to see the amount of sun it's going to get. For instance, you don't want to plant hostas in direct sun because they will burn. They're a good plant for shade-loving areas. Hydrangea is another plant that will take a lot of shade and don't necessarily need the sun. And yet there's other things like your spireas and your potentellas and a number of other plants that love the sun. So it's a matter of taking a look and seeing what your conditions are and then trying to match up the plant to the conditions you have. Birch, for instance, love a moist area. Maples and some of the other plants can withstand a lot of drought. So you take what you like as far as that. By the way, I want to mention the lady that was with me this morning was my wife, and I tried to get her to stay because she was ahead of the perennial gardens in Randolph for a long time and could have been answering a lot more questions about perennials than I. So I just wanted to clear that up. I am married to a very gorgeous lady.
Absolutely, and one that knows quite a bit about perennials. What was her name, by the way?
Her name is Bronwyn.
Bronwyn.
Yes.
That is a lovely name. It almost sounds like a flower.
Well, it's a Welsh-Irish name, a Celtic name, and it was given to her by her mother at the time. Long story, but anyhow, it's a Welsh-Irish name, and it's a beautiful name.
We're speaking with Bob Zondag, the garden doctor for today's show. If you have a question, feel free to call in on the Ho-Chunk Lucky numbers at 885-4446. And LA can always let us know if you have a question for the garden doctor whenever it comes to planting. Maybe you have questions about your grass. Is this the right time to plant your grass and fertilize it? Absolutely. And when it comes to the different cultivars of grass, what is the most successful to grow in this area?
Actually, you want a mixture. And
Oh.
this is one of the important things. At the time you plant grass, if you're planting a new lawn, the one thing you want to do is definitely get a quality grass seed because you can't change it later on. I know so often in grasses, for instance, my lawn, I moved into an area, I didn't plant my grass, it was there, but there's a lot of hard fescue in the grass, which is terrible. You know, you want to mow it each week very much to keep the grass the same height. There's three varieties of seeds that you have in a cool weather grass seed. You have the ryegrass, which is usually used just as a companion grass. It comes up quickly, helps hold the soil in place, and then it also keeps the moisture in the ground. And then you have a fescue, and what you want in a fescue is a creeping red fescue. It sounds funny, but it doesn't creep, it's not red, but it's a very good fescue. And then you want the bluegrass. And those are the three components to any grass seed. Now, in the fescues, you have hard fescues and soft fescues. Hard fescues are a lot of times put in the cheaper mixes because they're a heavier seed, so it doesn't take as many seeds to, it creates more weight. And the bluegrasses, there's something like 120 different varieties of bluegrasses, a lot of more prone to funguses than others. And so you would like to get a good mixture of grass seed when you start it, or when you're seeding now even. And there's a lot of ways to make cheap grass seed. Ryegrass, for instance, even though it doesn't winter here, is a heavier seed, and a lot of people will put it in. If you see a quick starter lawn seed, you want to stay away from it because that's mainly ryegrass. And it's even the perennial ryes are not perennial in this part of the world.
Garden Doctor, 885-4446. If you have a question, we have a caller on the line. Let's go to the phones. Hello, you are speaking with the Garden Doctor.
Hello.
Good morning.
Hello?
Yes.
Good morning. Eight 4446 is the number if you have a question for the Garden Doctor. And I do believe we still have that caller on the line. Caller, what was your question? And we do not. Jungs Garden Center, you mentioned 6 different locations?
5 different locations.
5 different locations.
Including the corporate headquarters in Randolph, which is closest to us.
We've been talking a lot about grass and about the different flowers that we can plant for spring, but you also mentioned some of the tree varieties that you have, such as the birch and maple. What other varieties would be good to plant this time of year?
Any of the trees would be fine to plant this time of year. Keep emphasizing you have at least 3 months for a plant to root in. And so in the fall is a great time to plant, even though the trees sometimes are starting to lose leaves or starting to change color. The roots are perfectly viable as far as growing into the ground. And so the fall is a great time to plant. When you plant a tree, though, one mistake that a lot of people make is they plant them too deep. The root of a tree should be no further down than 2 to 3 inches. The first root, the top root on a tree, should be no further than 2 to 3 inches. And what we see around town around here now is a lot of people have planted their maples, the root deep, so that it doesn't come to the top of the ground like maples choose to do. And now the maples are declining or starting to die back, and the reason for that is because they were planted too deep. So we always try to counsel people when they get the trees to plant them so the root is close to the surface of the ground, 2 to 3 inches below. So we have all sorts of different trees, from heights of no more than 10 feet to heights of 40 to 60 feet. And I always counsel people, if you have a ranch house, why do you want to put a 60-foot tree in front of it?
Right.
You know, and if you have a 2 or 3 story home, you certainly can obtain any type of tree you want. Also, the area that have for a tree, if you only got 20 feet, there's a lot of trees you don't want to put in at 20 feet. Red trees, a red maple, I always try to tell people, plant red maples behind your house so they have to go through your house to see the red maple, rather than putting it in front of your house where they will attract their eye as opposed to the home. The landscaping always should be done to provide some incentive to the house or some attractiveness to the house, as opposed to the other way around. You want to emphasize your front door. So when you don't want to plant a red tree on the end of the house where it's going to be away from the front door. So, you know, there's a lot of different advice we can give people when we're talking to them as far as planting different trees and things.
I believe we do have another call, 885-4446. If you have a question for the Garden Doctor, let's go back to the phones. Good morning. You are with the Garden Doctor.
You busted it there a little bit, Thomas. That was me. I called earlier, but I couldn't hear you guys on the phone.
The best way to get rid of weeds, and there's probably
I'm
a
going
lot
to hang up and listen to your answer.
Thank you so
Where
much.
are the weeds?
Like by rocks, by like a windowsill, right by the basement windowsill. We got them right there, and then we got them right where rocks are.
Yeah, that's one of the problems is that weeds are a definite problem. One of the first things I warn people about weeds is do not let them seed. So many of the weeds are getting tall now, and you see seeds on them, and those seeds are going to be planted if you let them go through. So whatever you do, whether you pull them or whether you want to spray them or whatever, make sure you cut them down so that they don't seed into your lawn or don't seed into your gardens or whatever. As far as killing weeds, other than the hoe or pulling them out, you have got Roundup or any of the glycogen-type killers, which will kill everything. And you have to be aware of the fact that if you use Roundup, it can kill your good plants as well as the other weeds. So if you're killing weeds along a sidewalk, along your stones, areas that you do not have any other plants, or you don't care for any other plants grow there, Roundup is a great way of killing them. Now, Roundup you want to put on when it's dry. You want the Roundup to be able to stay on the weeds for at least 8 hours before it gets washed off. The other thing you can do is you can use a broadleaf killer if you're going to kill weeds in your lawn. A broadleaf killer will kill anything that other than grass. And it's a great time of the year to plant it. And everyone's asking about how do you get rid of creeping Charlie, or how do you get rid of those violets, or how do you get rid of wild alfalfa and different things that you find in your lawn. Well, now is the time to kill it. And I would use a Weed Beater Ultra. And the reason for this is because this, unlike a lot of the other herbicides that you would use on your grass, can be used at just about any temperature above 55. A lot of the other commercial herbicides for grass, you have to have temperatures 72 or above. So Weed Beater Ultra is a great one, and right now is a great time to put it on because the plants are starting to move their food to the roots, and they will take their herbicides from the leaf right to the roots. And here again, you want to have at least an 8-hour period of dryness for when you put it on. Excuse me. The other time to do it is right after when you get a hard frost. So you have 2 applications in the fall at which will get rid of your creeping Charlie. One right about now, and then the other one after we have a hard frost. And by doing that, you will be able to get rid of the weeds in your grass. I hope that has answered if you have weeds in your perennials and in other parts of the plants, pulling and hoeing is about the only way you can do it. In the spring of the year, you can use preen, which is a herbicide that forms a gaseous vapor and will kill seeds at the time they start to germinate. You have a pre-emergent, you have a post-emergent, and that one's a pre-emergent as opposed to the Weed Beater Ultra, which is a post-emergent that is put on after it emerges.
So the glycogen-based weed killers like Roundup, that might be for targeting a specific patch of just weeds, but otherwise Weed Beater Ultra, that we could spray on our entire lawn, and that's only going to kill the broadleaves.
Right. Weed Beater Ultra will only kill the broadleaf plants. Now, if you spray that on your perennials, it'll kill your perennials also.
Ooh.
It's designed specifically for putting on lawns and killing broadleaf weeds in the lawn itself.
Something else that we were sort of alluding to, especially talking about trees and planting them too deep and having the root systems at the right level to be able to grow. Do you offer anything besides advice, like a planting ruler that makes that process a little bit easier? Because it always seems to be very subjective, a thumb deep, and everyone has a different size thumb.
Yeah, it isn't that you have to measure 2 to 3 inches off. It just says that you have to keep that top root near the surface of the ground. And, I hate to tell people that because some people are very conscious of that and they're maybe out there with their rulers and so on and so forth. Just keep the top root in the top 2 to 5 inches of the ground and you'll be just fine.
Do you recommend that when people are planting gardens in spring or maybe late summer, rather than putting the seeds right into the ground, would it be easier to start them from a starter and then transplant them into the larger garden?
Yeah, it certainly it depends upon the seed that you have. It depends upon the maturity of the plant. Seed plants, seed-started plants in packs are certainly good, but there's a lot of them that you don't have to do that with, such as peas and beans and carrots and even tomatoes can be sown into the ground directly. It just depends upon when you want to harvest them. Some people actually will put seeds into a wet paper toweling and let them germinate, and then they will take with the thumb and finger or with a tweezer and actually plant them. But that's going
sounds very meticulous.
Little far out. Yeah, it's taking the fun away from gardening. There was something. Bulbs. Our spring blooming bulbs will be in soon. The tulips, the daffodils, the crocus, the hyacinths, the alliums and what have you. Richard will cover that in a more thorough manner with his thing, but let you know that they will be in soon, and I know that we're all looking forward to seeing those bulbs come in at any time.
Bob Zondag, the garden doctor from Jungs Garden Center. We do have a call, 4446, and let's go over to the line right now. Hello, you are speaking with the garden doctor.
Good morning. I have a question for you.
Yes.
My neighbor has lilac bushes, and the tops of the things, of the tree limbs, are dying. But now they're blooming again. And my lilac bush looks like the leaves are all dying, but now I'm getting new buds on it. What's going on with that?
Lilacs are very prone to funguses. And more than likely what is happening is there's fungus on the leaves. It probably is a graying of the leaf, and then those leaves drop. But lilacs are very hardy and shouldn't have any problem coming back the following year. So I don't know that the dying of the leaves is real significant. It also could be that they were burnt as far as sun. We had a very hot sun this summer and even this fall, and it could be that. But more than likely it's a fungal problem.
Oh, okay. It's just kind of strange. I've never seen this before. So
There are repeat blooming lilacs that will bloom a couple times a year, and they're becoming more popular. There's also lilacs, many types of lilacs, and so I don't know what color it is or what.
well, theirs are white, mine's purple. Whatever. That's all I can tell you. But
Oh, that's fine.
it's just kind of strange that all the leaves are. I think I hear what you're saying about a fungus. So
Yeah, and that's normally what we find is that the leaves will have a graying on it and some fungus. But like I say, with the lilacs, it should not be a problem.
okay.
Thank you
Well,
for the call.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it. I got a little bit more understanding. It's just Mother Nature doing its thing. So
Right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. I believe we have another call for the garden doctor, 4446. And let's go back to the phones. Hello, you're with the garden doctor.
Hi, I just got one question for the garden doctor. When should I think about planting my garlic?
Right now,
Right now?
fall is the best time to plant garlic.
Okay.
And usually
should I
the garden
mix
center.
anything in with the soil as a fertilizer or anything to get a little boost to get it going? Or
Well, for
Okay.
morning glories, by the way. If my friend is out there, he asked me why his morning glories weren't blooming. I recommended some blooming and rooting. And my brother, who is much smarter than I am, as far as plants, not about anything else, but as far as plants, tells me that morning glories hate any type of fertilizer. They like to be abused. So if he's out there telling, don't fertilize your morning glories, that's probably the problem right now is that they're getting too much fertilizer.
can I use just a little? I got a little bit of 10-10-10 fertilizer from you guys. Can I mix a little bit at it with the dirt before I plant the garlic? Or
Well, that would be fine, except that right now we're not trying to fertilize plants because you aren't trying to stimulate
Okay.
growth. In our soils around here, we usually are quite fertile as far as the land. I would, if you're not going to put down a phosphate or a blooming type fertilizer, then I would just leave it and fertilize in the spring.
Okay, all right.
But
Sounds
right now
good.
is a good time to plant the garlic. Otherwise, very early spring would be the other time.
Okay, and I can get the garlic right out of the cold room at the center?
Yes. I didn't look to see as to how many varieties they had. Back in my day when I was buying garlic, we usually had 10, 12 different varieties.
Okay. All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think we have time for one more call here for the garden doctor. Hello, caller. You are on the air.
hello.
Yes. What is your question for the garden doctor?
Yeah, I have 3 large rhododendrons. They're very large. They're probably 4 feet high, 4 feet wide. I'm wondering when I can trim them back and what's the best time of the year to transplant them.
Well, as far as transplanting, you can either do it in late fall, or you can do it in spring before they break bud. As far as pruning a rhododendron, you want to prune them right after they're done blossoming. The rhododendron will have already set their buds, and so if you do pruning now, you're going to cut the buds off. It won't hurt the plant. And matter of fact, we shouldn't be doing any pruning now. Back up. We shouldn't do any pruning in the fall because you're going to send it into new growth, and that new growth will be hurt in the winter. So what you'd want to do is to prune right after it gets done blossoming in the spring. As far as transplanting, you want to transplant just before it breaks bud, or you can transplant it in the fall of the year. But the best time would be just before it breaks bud in the spring.
In the spring. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And thank you for all the great questions we've had today for the Garden Doctor. It's great to have you guys back. You're here every Wednesday at 10:30. I believe that Richard will be joining us next week. Once again, where can people find all the various Jung Garden Centers that you guys have in the area?
Well, the closest one, of course, would be Randolph, and their hours are 8 to 4, Monday through Saturday. And then you have an easy one in Sun Prairie, too. You just right off of 151, the first exit in Sun Prairie off 151. And then we have two more in Madison, one on Verona Road and one on Northport. And the fifth one's up in Stevens Point. So we have 5 different garden centers. They all are loaded with stock, and we try to keep smart people at all of them.
Well, and you're certainly there as well, and I think you're giving Richard a run for his money, Bob. So thank you again for joining us today, and can't wait to speak to you again.
Thank you.
This has been the Garden Doctor on 95.3 WBEV. Almost time for ABC News at the top of the hour.